Hey everybody, here we are again, picking up where we left off, line 164 of Wheelock's Latin Reader, edited by Richard Lafleur, of Pliny's Letters. This is page 261, and we just covered how Pliny the Elder had been telling those who were at Pomponianus's place that they shouldn't be afraid, that the fires that they were seeing on Vesuvius were just houses that had been abandoned in a hurry by people and had caught fire. It's not that the mountain itself was actually on fire, which he may have actually known was the case, that these were, lava flows. Significantly scarier. Tomb, so this is just an adverb meaning next, then. It's like tunk at that time, but it is saying, well, then, next. Say. So this is going to be a reflexive subject, could be ablative, could be accusative, but it's going to reflect whatever the subject of the sentence is. Quieti, we don't know exactly what to do with that, but it could be dative, likely dative, dedit, and then here we've got our verb. We know as often our subject here equals Pliny the Elder, so he's a money subject. Subject equals Pliny the Elder. I don't know why I wrote the money sign there. Let me repeat. Subject equals Pliny the Elder. So then at that time, he gave himself, so that's going to be our direct object. And this is our verb, and our subject equals Pliny. So Pliny gave himself over to quiet. Well, quiet is our word that derives from this, but this is rest, right? This is sleep. So he's going to say, all right, good light show out there. That's pretty cool. I'm going to go to sleep. That's how unperturbed I am. And he slept. So nice perfect form. So that's a noun form. That's the verb form of this. Quiesco is actually the verb to kind of go with sleep, and then this is the perfect form. And he slept the truest, we might say the deepest sleep, quidem, and this is indeed, certainly, truly. We're not lying here, is what the quidem is saying. So at that point, he gave himself over to sleep, and he slept incredibly deeply, in truth, for the meatus, and that's not meat. This is related to the verb eo ire, to go, and so it's going to kind of go along, go through. This is the motion, we might say. The motion of the anima. And we've seen anima before to mean either courageous spirit or the kind of studioso anima, or animus at that point. I guess that was animus. We should make a distinction. Animus is the spirit, but it's related to anima, first declension feminine, which is going to be breath. These things are all associated. So the motion of breath. So this is our subject, that's masculine second declension. This is genitive first declension. So for the motion of his breath, qui, so that's could be a couple things, but whatever it's going to be masculine. So it's probably working back with meatus. And it has to be singular, so or it could be singular or plural, but we've got nothing plural going on, so it has to be meatus. And this is nominative too, so that's going to be the subject of this relative clause, whatever it's going to be. So, qui illi propter amplitudinem corporis gravior et sonantior erat. All right, and then we get to our verb, and that note, we know it's going to close off this relative clause we have going on. So for the motion of his breath, which was heavier and more sonorous, more louder, propter, on account of the amplitude, on account of the size of his body. So again, note that we don't need to put eus here, or even what would be more appropriate, sui, of his body. We don't need either of that because Latin just is happy to use the noun for a body part without making a distinction. So then, what do we do with illi here? What tense or no, what case is that? So we've got illa, illa, illud. So illi could be a decent nominative plural, but we've got then no plural subject. This actually has to be, so we know it's ilius, ilius, ilius in the genitive, so nominative, genitive, all this being singular, and then finally illi, kind of across the board. That's the dative. So we have this being what I'd call a dative of possession. And this is what happens when you get datives with things that are using the verb to be. So which was, that is the motion of his breath, which was hit for him, maybe it's a dative of reference. They're kind of related concepts, which was heavier and more sonorous for him on account of the size of his body. So we haven't gotten this yet. Of course, we've seen that Pliny the Elder is getting up in years. He likes to eat. He likes to sleep. One could kind of see where this amplitude of body might come from. Of course, this is being presented in a fairly positive way. This has been the only kind of moment where we've started to say, well, is that really something that's valuable? So there are a couple of responses to this. Of course, being corpulent in the ancient world meant that you could feed yourself. This was in a era before processed foods and heavy industrial agriculture. So his weight, his size is a sign of his wealth and his power. Furthermore, there's a kind of tradition among philosophers and others, not necessarily being fat, but having different kind of bodily defects. Socrates, has some weird-looking eyes and other things, and yet he's wise. So there's something to be said for this is a man who discharges all of his duties well and has, poise of mind. But at the same time, he's not a complete physical specimen. That's not the full story. So our only kind of critique so far of Pliny the Elder, everything else has been universally positive, almost too much. So I was scrolling down, but maybe I was getting ahead of myself because we haven't even gotten to the end of the sentence. So then he gave himself over to sleep, and he did sleep, the truest sleep indeed, for the motion of his breath, which on account of his kind of large size was heavier and more sonorous, by those ab eis qui. So here we have a relative clause referring back. This qui is a long qui. This one must have been a short one up here. That was singular. This is plural. Actually, I think this might be long anyway, but at any point, that's a singular qui. This is a long qui working with eis. So by those who abor sapontur, and Lafleur helps us out here. This is a verb for kind of go back and forth, and it takes the ablative. So going back and forth at the limen, the threshold, that is his door. And it might have not actually been a door, it might have just been a portal, but those who were walking back and forth by the door, audia bitbatur, were hearing. So we're saying we've got proof that he was sleeping because he was snoring somewhat louder and heavily than otherwise one might, and it's because he was a large man. That was pretty fun. That's taken us 8 minutes to talk about some snoring. We'll continue on with this next sentence in the next video. I'll try to make these shorter. I know it can go on, and you're probably tired of me by now. I'll cut it off right here. See you next time.